guys, this is Sukanya Rana and I hope you all are preparing well for prelims. Now I welcome you all in this particular video for Streak Initiative, and from this week onwards, since it's the prelims season, we've decided to cover more and more questions on prelims. So from now on, me, that is Sukanya Rana, and also Santosh sir, both of us are going to cover a few topics from your prelims section, and this week we are going to talk about some economics questions, right? First things first, before we move on to your questions, please go and check out the links that have been provided in the description box. There's a registration link and also a Telegram group link. Now, if you register for this particular program, you can access the full PDF of all the compilation of the questions that has been provided by both of us. Also, some CSAT questions that will be covered by Ravi sir. Also, what we'll do is we will providing with you all the compilation of the news, your Yojana, your RSTV, all these news will be compiled into one place and will be given to you free of cost. So you don't have to do much, just go and register for this particular program. So let's dive into your questions for the day. Like I said, we'll be talking about economics and we'll be covering some current affairs related news that were there in your, say, last 1 year of current affairs. So the first question here is actually upon an initiative of the government. That is the National Infrastructure Pipeline. So the question goes like, select the correct statement in context of National Infrastructure Pipeline. The first option here talks about is it includes both economic and social infrastructure, and second is it aims to improve the infrastructure project preparation and attract new investment, both foreign and domestic. So basically, two things you should know with respect to this particular initiative. Number one is it covering only the economic and social infrastructure? See, social infrastructure talks about all these investment that is made into social sectors like education, health. So all these ideas do this particular project cover. You should know that. And second thing that we're talking about is whether it will have investment both from the private sector, the foreign sector and the domestic sector. So in this particular answer, I think the correct answer here is actually C. Both the statements are correct. See, this particular initiative was brought in by the government because we have a policy of reaching 5 trillion economy. So if you want to reach to that level of economic development, obviously your base is going to be infrastructure. So in order to take care of that infrastructure development, government came up with this particular idea of National Infrastructure Pipeline. Now, this is like an ideology of the government to bring about this world-class infrastructure that is to be provided across the nation, which improves the quality of life of the people. Now, it's very common to understand when we're talking about infrastructure which can overall provide quality of life to the people. So obviously, both the economic and the social infrastructure is going to be part of it. So that is like kind of a common sense that you can derive of the option 1, and you can attempt in that ways. Because see, when you're talking about an infrastructure program on a national level, you just cannot talk about building up highways, ports and everything. That is important. That can provide you economic growth, but also social infrastructure is very crucial. So linking it to that idea, I think you can be pretty much clear about the statement 1. The second statement here is again talking about foreign and domestic. So this is an initiative which requires a lot of investment. And if we just limit to the idea of domestic, then that kind of investment can be difficult. So from that understanding, I think it is pretty much easy to understand that government cannot limit the infrastructure support only to the domestic measures, because we need a lot of infrastructure that is to be built, and that cannot be completely adhered to by the domestic sector. So with that sense, I think even the statement 2 is right in this case, and we have both the statements that are correct. Let us look at the next question here. Now, this question is dealing with a model. Now, the models have been in news for a lot of time. Like we've got a lot of different models. We've got engineering, procurement, construction model. We've got your build, operate and transfer model. We've also got your hybrid model. So all these models have been in news a lot. In fact, these models are part of even your main syllabus. So it's very important that you understand the difference between each and every model and how does it work, because that will help you out not only in prelims but also in mains. So what we are doing here is about engineering, procurement and construction model, that is EPC model. So the first statement here says that under this model, the cost is completely borne by the government. Okay. So here the statement says that the cost is completely borne by the government. That means all the finances that is to be provided in any project, like you building a highway, all the finances, that is the government is going to take care. Second is that the private sector participation is just limited to the engineering expertise. So I guess you guys must have attempted. So the correct answer to this particular question is C. So, see, this particular model is actually built upon this ideology is that private sector can utilize the best potential that they have. And the best potential they have is expertise over techniques, procedures, and the new technology. So, all this element is something that can be taken care of by private sector, and let the other ideas like the investment, the land acquisition and everything, let the government do that. Right, because usually what we saw in the other models like bill, operate, transfer model, where private sector would take care of all the procedures from the starting to the end, we see a lot of delays that were brought into the project because of various administrative concerns. Right, so in order to get pass over that, this is where we introduce this particular model. So here what we see is that all the procurement of the raw material, the construction cost, everything is borne by the government sector. And private sector is only limited to providing you with the engineering expertise. Now, if you look at another model here, if you remember, there's this hybrid model also. Now, in hybrid model, there is this cost sharing of 60 to 40%. Like private sector is going to provide some and some is going to be provided by the government sector. In build, operate, transfer model, you have complete private sector that is providing you the finances, because then there's this toll system that is attached to it, right? So there are a couple of different different models that have been set up by the government to look into building up infrastructure, right? So that is the theme that we're going to cover today. So I guess both these statements are correct. And again, this is an important topic. When you see through prelims, just go through these different models. It will help you out to distinguish what all differences are there between each and every model. Next question is again on a model. Now, we have a government-owned contractor-operated model. Now, this is another model which was there in news this time. So this model, the first statement in this question is that this model was actually recommended by Shekatkar committee. Now, if you guys remember, Shekatkar committee actually dealt with certain reforms that were required in the defense sector. And it gave a lot of important recommendations, not just related to operations and models, but also how do we bring about right kind of systems in the army so that we can have a more lean army, more organized army, and cut out extra work that is not required to be done by the army. So those kind of refinement model, making army more effective, was actually suggested by this particular committee. Second statement here says is that under the model, the private companies will make investment on land, machinery and other support system. So again, when you're looking at these questions with respect to models, one thing you should know is you should understand where is the private sector is going to be invested and where is the government is going to be invested, right? Who is going to take care of the land, the finances, or who's going to take care of the operations? This is very important. This distinguishment is very important with respect to prelims, right? So in this particular question, Usually people would confuse that, okay, it's Shekatkar committee, so it's related to defense, so maybe it might not have suggested this model, but this statement is right. So this is one tricky thing that people might face, but do remember it's by Shekatkar committee. Second statement here is again talking about how private company is going to make all the investment. Now you have to know here, see, this statement is wrong. So the answer for this particular question is only A. So in case of government owned operator, contractor operated model, what is happening here is that all the assets are actually owned by government. That you can understand by the statement only. It says government owned and contractor operated. So private sector is actually going to take care of all the operations, the methods. So there are a couple of functions that are there in the defense sector. Like private sector here can be involved in supply chain management. They can be involved in logistics. They can be involved in other kinds of important infrastructure ideas that can be provided, and those kind of things can be provided into this particular thing. So taking care of operations there with respect to logistics, supply chain, that is what the private sector is going to do in this particular model. All right. So yeah, so this particular statement is wrong. The second statement, it is the government who takes care of the major assets here. So land is an asset, machinery is an asset. So all these assets are going to be taken care by the government. So this particular question, we have A as the right answer. Now let us look at the next question of the day. That is the fourth question. Now this question is actually talking about your agricultural subsidies and the role of WTO and how India is related to that. So it's been a lot in news, like how India has been criticized a lot by providing too much of subsidies to the agricultural sector, which actually comes under the Amber Box. So there are three boxes, the amber, the green and the blue. Each box has its set of support that is being provided to the government, by the government to the farmers. And ultimately, you know, there are certain set of restrictions that is being placed with respect to each box. Like green box, you can provide as much support as you want to the farmers, right? So that is what the biggest problem here is, that a lot of developing countries have initiatives like subsidies and all, which are actually covered under the Amber Box. And the developed nations, they provide support to the farmers in the form of green box subsidies. So that does not have any kind of limitations, and that is what has been creating a lot of tussle with respect to India and WTO. So let us look at the question here. So the question here says is, which among the following subsidies is considered to be part of Amber Box subsidies under the Agreement of Agriculture? Number one here is minimum support price. Number two here is income support through PM-KISAN, that is Pradhan, Mantri, Kisan, Samman, Nidhi. And third is your financial support under agriculture universities to enhance R&D. And then we have a couple of options to choose from. Now, if you know, like the green box subsidies, like the very first thing when you hear about green box subsidies is that it includes a lot of money that is provided with respect to research and development, right? So that is a very common understanding to have about this particular box. Now, if you look here, so you can easily narrow down that, okay, third will not be part of it, right? So the third option, which talks about financial support for universities to enhance the R&D. So obviously that will not be part of Amber Box solutions. If you look at minimum support price, now this has been this issue has been a lot in current affairs. If you've not heard about it, how MSP has been kind of creating problems with respect to Amber Box subsidies, then you're actually living under the rock. So the idea here is MSP, the subsidies that is given to the farmers in the form of say electricity, in the form of pricing and everything, all these ideas comes under the Amber Box. And India as per the WTO regulations, India have to reduce it, and eventually what they're planning is to completely remove these kind of subsidies, because they are trade distorting. That is the idea behind it. So I think 3 you've already ruled out, and 1 you know for sure that it is going to be there, right? So what we are left with is option A and option B. Now let us look at the second option here. Now income support from Prime Minister Kisan. Now what is the scheme? If you remember, the scheme came out few years back in which Prime Minister is to give 6,000, the government is to give 6,000 rupees on an interval of 3 period. That is 2,000 is to be given yearly to the farmers who've been identified throughout the nation, right? So that was the basic scheme idea here. Now, see, if you've read a lot, like if you've read about, say, green box subsidies and the idea of blue box subsidies, what happens here is that you must have heard that European and the US nations, they actually provide direct money to the farmers, right? So there is this European scheme of agricultural fund subsidy schemes, guarantee fund. There's this agriculture guarantee fund which is there under a European Commission. So that under that particular scheme is what they do is they provide direct income to the farmers, right? And similar scheme is in working in USA. So these two particular schemes are actually already working on a global level, and farmers are actually getting benefit out of it. So obviously, these schemes are not part of Amber Box subsidies. Otherwise, the developed nation would not point at others and ask us to reduce those particular subsidies. So from that angle, if you're able to connect that, okay, these kind of schemes are already running in US and Europe, like they do provide direct income support to the farmers. Somewhat similar is with this particular scheme. So this particular scheme is not going to come under Amber Box solutions, right? So again, option 2 is something that you rule out here, and we have only option 1, that is MSP, which is part of the Amber Box subsidy. So answer here is A. And now let us look at the last question of the day, which deals with, it's a pretty simple question. I think it's a factual question, but the idea here is not just to answer this question. The idea here is, see, recently a lot of steps have been taken by RBI with respect to digital payment systems. There were reports released. We are also talking about how do we make there were rules drafted out recently by RBI making these digital payments more secure. We are also talking about another alternative to NPCI, like National Payment Corporation of India. There have been talks about how this particular body, which deals with all the payment gateways, have become too big to fail. So we're bringing on more private players with respect to that. So there have been a lot of talks that have been going with respect to this particular digital payment system. And this digital payment system is also important because in previous year, we also had merchant discount rate as a question that came in your prelims. So this particular topic as a whole is very important. So keep in mind when you're studying for prelims, because any question from this particular topic on a larger level can come here. So the question here is very simple, I think. Recently, there was this digital payment index. Basic idea is to how to enhance the idea of digital payment in India. And it was published by which of the organizations? So we have NPCI, we have Reserve Bank of India, we have the Finance Ministry, and lastly, we have the Indian Banks Association. Now, I think, Indian Banks Association is actually something that has come to, a couple of banks have come together and formed this particular association. So we don't really have any digital payment policies that are taking care of this particular initiative. In fact, I think the most confusing option here would be NPCI, because this particular payment gateway takes care of a lot of different RTGS, NFT, your RuPay, your IMPS, everything is taken care by this particular this particular body, NPCI, right? So I think the most confusing option here would be A and B. You can easily rule out Finance Ministry. Finance Ministry would not do that. You can easily rule out D as an option, because again, this particular association is not dealing directly with the payment gateways, right? So out of these options, RBI was the one which came out with this particular index. And again, it also came out with certain security related rules, which came out in 2021 itself. and it is also mulling over getting another body with respect to NPCI, so that we do not have one big body which is controlling the whole payment system in India. So yeah, so answer for this particular question is B. So guys, I think we're done for the day. This was like a quick revision of few topics that you can do on a daily basis. It will not take too much of your time, and it will just be like enhancing whatever you've learned. It will provide a small break from your busy schedule for prelims. So I hope you did benefit something out of it, and we'll get with some more questions tomorrow. Also, before I leave, please register in the link that has been provided. All the best and take care.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civilsdaily.